Welcome to Quilt Blocks on American Barns. I'm Eleanor Burns. Every block that is in this quilt is painted on a barn as part of the American Quilt Trail. It's wonderful. Well, we have already made the first block. The first barn, the very middle, is called the Monitor Barn, the most popular of all of the barns. And right up in the top is a painted hole in the barn door block. I love the windmill that we put beside it, my dog Peanut, a tractor, even some cows are looking on. Well, that's the first barn that we did. We did 2 blocks. We did the Farmer's Daughter, beautiful in greens, reds, and yellows. Perfect for this quilt. And then the second block we did is the wagon wheel. And you can actually see that circular motion in that block. Well, today we're going to do our second barn. It's right down here. It's called the Dutch barn. Now, it was introduced by the Dutch settlers in the late 1600s through 1800s. Has a great peak on it. And the block on it is called End of the Day. This is a 12-inch barn, so this is just a 3-inch block. Oh, small, but how about a 6-inch barn with a 1.5-inch block on it? Even better. Then it's finished off with that Ralston Purina checkerboard. Great quilt. Well, I want to show you one of the original Dutch barns. This is in upstate New York. Around 600 of them still survive. Now, they always have this roof line on them. It's called a gabled roof. Typical is the wagon doors. It's always a pair of wagon doors with a pentus above it. And the pentus is just to shade the rain off as the wagons go through. And on either side are smaller animal doors. Can you imagine the scale of that? Well, there are usually no windows on the sides. However, if you look closely, there's some little martin holes up in the roof line for ventilation. Just a great old barn. It was never painted, and it's still standing. Well, these are the End of the Day blocks. I lined them all up. Just a little 1.5-inch block for a 6-inch. This is what we're going to do for a 12-inch barn. That's 3.5 before the finish. Or what if you want to just do a great country quilt and make a 6-inch block? Now, they are mirror image. From one strip, you get 2 mirror image blocks. Strips, it's perfect. I've got them all laid out. They're 1.5 inches wide. I have a dark and a light. And I have found that if you just flip them right sides together, again, get them lined up like this, they will actually hold together better if you just press them. Get them all lined up, and then you can really fly. Now, I'm using this gridded pressing mat so I can keep everything straight. Usually I say use a 1/4 inch. Well, today we're going to use a scant 1/4 inch, or just 1 thread less than a 1/4. Have my 1/4 inch foot on there, line that edge up, needle down, and pedal. Well, the reason that I'm using 1 thread less than a 1/4 or 4.0 on my machine is because I do everything mathematically. And every time you open a strip, every fold you lose just a little bit. So I'm just going to zip right down along this. Goes very, very fast. Each size has a different size strip. Now, just take this piece back on the pressing mat. Set the seam with the dark across the top. A little bit of steam would be great. And then open and press the seam so it's behind the dark. And I just use my fingers to really lead and open up my strip so there's no folds left. Perfect. Okay, now let's just take this strip, fold it in half, and cut on the fold. We need to have 2 equal pieces. Okay, cut in the fold. Take the first one and put it so that the dark is at the bottom, light at the top. Take the second strip, place it right sides together. And then when you take your fingers and you just run them along there, you can feel if the seams are locked together. Now we'll find out how good I am. These are supposed to be 2.5 inches. That is perfect. 2.5 inches when they're sewn together, and you are on. Because it's 2.5 inches that way, we're going to cut a 2.5 inch square. And out of these half strips, you should be able to get 4 squares. So just keep on cutting right along there. I have some already started, so I'll stop with that. Now, just take your ruler, line up the diagonal line along the left edge, take a permanent marking pen, and mark a diagonal line. Usually I start right in the middle, go up one way, go back to the middle, and down the other way. Perfect. Get all 4 marks so you can zip right along. Now, this is a great time, too, to have a stiletto. You want to make sure you have your stiletto. Line up your 1/4 inch foot on the line so that when you stitch, your stitching is a 1/4 inch away. And right now, I don't want my seams to twist. I have an automatic pivot right on there, so I'm just going to pick it up and move it. You would keep on assembly line sewing one piece after the other, then turn it around, and then just sew a 1/4 inch away from the second side. Perfect. You know, this block was actually first run in the Farm Journal. Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Okay, that's what it looks like. Sewn a 1/4 inch on both sides. I have numerous ones done. You only need to have 4 for each block. Take your ruler, cut it in half on the diagonal, and as you cut, stack and make 2 different piles, so that you have that mirror image thing going. So let's just put it back on the pressing mat and set the seam, open, and press right into it. You know, quite often I go ahead and square before I press. This time I'm doing it the opposite way. Okay, amazing what you get whenever you open that up, but their mirror image. Take your 6 inch square up ruler, line up the diagonal line on the patch, and always put the little triangles up in the top right corner. And at this point, all you have to do is just cut off that tip. Now turn the whole patch around, put the diagonal line down through the seam, and line up 2 inches on the outside edges and trim again. So that's your patch. Well, I have 2 stacks. They're mirror image. I could pick whichever one I want. So let's just pick this one and lay it out so that you have those little triangles in the corners. Just turn it around every time, and that is the block in a jiffy. So now let's just sew down the vertical row, flip it right sides together, and you can actually feel when you pick these little guys up, you can feel along there, lock them in place. So we're going to sew continuously right down along. So line this up right here, foot down. Now, whenever you're doing that little 6 inch block, the 6 inch barn with that little block that turns out 1.5 inches in the end. Oh, those are only 1 1/4 inch strips. You think this is little. It's amazing how you do the other sides. Okay, line this up, go straight through, use your stiletto, and whenever you go across, you can see how the stitching is supposed to look. That is perfect right there. So when you open it up, and you look at it, you've got your seam all lined up. Flip it right sides together and push this top seam up and line it up with the other seam down. Squeeze it together so you can get it perfect. Okay, seam down, top seam up, underneath seam down. You know, I've taught this to my students, and they actually thought, oh my gosh, they can't do this small of a piece, but they can. I get to look first. Pretty good. Now, we want to make sure that we lay it flat and take that bulk out of there. So you take your scissors and you clip it right here and unsew the straight stitches. There's about 3 of them. If you take your stiletto and just put it right underneath. You can pull it out. Turn it over on the other side. Put your tip of your stiletto right under those stitches and pull it out. Whoa. And lay it wrong side up and swirl from the top to the right to the left and up. Swirl it clockwise in a circle. That center pops open, just mush it good right in the middle. You've got a little pinwheel and flat as can be on the right side. I'm going to get my barn ready. You can have some fun with the texture in the fabric for the barn. Now on this one, it's made of bricks. That looks a lot of fun. But look at the sky. The sky is clouds just floating along there. Probably the animals are a little too small, but they're cute, aren't they? Or you could go ahead and have wood. And this one is going vertical up and down. Or you can make your wood go across. Put some very realistic animals in your grass. Or what if you want to have some really funny ones? I love these. And I think it would be especially fun if I just brought this cow and made him look like he was coming right out of the animal door. That would be great. Or you don't even have to do a barn at all. What if you did a church? My sister turned her Dutch barn into a church with some stained glass windows. Doors are the same size. And then she put trees. It looks like a winter sky. Snow coming down and the trees are covered with snow. Really cute. So have fun with your block. I have mine all laid out. I'm going to start up here in the roof. This is the piece for the very top, the peak. You have to have your sky piece. And I always think of, okay, make your lines how the roof goes. If you just think that way, you can't go wrong. So put your sky right sides together, draw a diagonal line on it. This is how you want to open that up like that. So once you draw that line on there, just put your needle right on the very corner. It's better if you sew through the middle of a side instead of off of a corner. So this time you put your needle and you sew right on the line. Oh my gosh, we're always switching back and forth. 1/4 inch away on the line. This time it's on the line. And then put your 1/4 inch line in your ruler and trim, so that we can just open that sky up. This is a big hunk. I'm sure you could do something with that, but I'm going to just get rid of it now. Okay, so you open that up like that, do a little pressing, and now comes the second side of the roof. Put your sky on there. Remember how the sky is supposed to go. That diagonal line, put it right on there. And this time, you want to make sure you have that 1/4 inch right up at the top. So once again, let's start right here in the middle. So from the middle down to the point. If you put the point right underneath your needle, oh, you are in trouble. You just gonna have your little tip chewed right off. Okay, so let's just sew right along here. And that actually is the end of the roof. So one more trimming. 1/4 inch line on the stitches, trim away, press it open, perfect, looking great. Now, this part, the block has 2 pieces sewn on each side so you can see they're exactly the same width. No rain coming onto this roof, but I need to have side pieces right here. And so I did the mirror image. I put a line one direction and turned in the other. And I just sewed on both sides of the line. And then all you have to do is exactly the same thing. Trim that off. That's one way. Turn this around. Trim the second time. I think this is a lot easier than building a barn. So when you open those up, this is what these pieces look like. And they go on both sides. And now we need to have a sky there and a sky there. And that will complete the whole top of the roof. And you sew these units together. Be very careful you keep these in a straight line going down along there. Now, the wagon door is just huge, and this is the pentas above it. We've got that strip above it, and the two side doors. These are all just rectangles and squares. They're all sewn together, and the seams are all pressed towards the wood part. That's easy. But after all, this is a Dutch barn. So I think we need a Dutch door, don't you? Well, this door is exactly the same size, but you know the Dutch doors are split in the middle. So go ahead, split it open, and you can put an animal head peeking out. Be sure you sew the animal head right in there and sew that whole door together. That looks really cute. So for the block itself, you can sew all of these units together and just sew grass along the bottom. Or if you'd like to make a little wall hanging, put a longer piece of grass and put sky on all of the different sides. Take your funny animals. They have paperback fusible web on them. Just cut out your animals and put them in place. Your barn is perfect. Another name for end of the day is the whirligig, and it's exactly the same block. This time it's with 2.5-inch strips, and it's from a jelly roll. All of the different colors, bright and vibrant, all sewn with a background strip, a 2.5-inch background. Now, since these blocks are mirror image, you get two different sets. The whole middle is made from one stack of blocks divided by a border, and then the outside edge is the second stack of blocks. They don't mix well together, but it's just such a charming quilt. Well, it's easy to do. You take and you sew the 2.5-inch strips together, cut those strips in half, and then you cut 4.5-inch squares. Draw the diagonal line, sew on both sides of the diagonal line, and then when you cut it, that's your block right there. There's your two mirror images. Well, you're so lucky because at the end of that strip, you actually have this little piece, just 2.5 inches wide, that you can go ahead and make a 4-patch. Now, if you're like me, there's no way you want to waste this. So we made the cutest quilt all out of the little 4-patches. This is what is actually left over from all of the pieces in the jelly roll. You actually see them. We set the 4-patch on point and then sewed triangles in between, 3 rows, lattice in between. Finished it off with a scalloped edge. Now, how cute is that? And it's fun. It's easy to do. I have it all set up. I want to show you how. Well, this is just the top right here. You start with a tape measure and measure your sides. Let's see how I do. I'm always losing this. Okay, so right there, we have about 36 inches. Okay, remember that, 36 inches. And let's go the other way and measure that. Okay, we've got about 44. 36 and 44. Oh, no, a little math. Let's see how we can do it. 36 minus 4. The new answer is 32. Okay, then the other one was 44 minus 4. The new answer is 40. Gotta think. What number is divisible into 32 and 40? Oh my gosh, this is so easy on this one. It's 8. So this is the way it goes. On the sides, we could mark 4 scallops that are 8 inches long. And on this side, we could mark 5 scallops that are 8 inches long, right? 4 times 8 is 32, and 5 times 8 is 40. Perfect. We have to start by marking all of the corners on diagonal lines. So let's do that. Just take a pen that's going to disappear. I think you can see that one. Go on up to this side and draw a line corner to corner. Now, we have this scallop ruler that we're just going to go ahead and look at 8 right here. You can see the 8 and 8 right here. So let's put the 8 right on that diagonal line. Let's line up the straight edge along the outside edge and just draw a scallop from 8 to 8. Pick it up and move it, and draw another line from 8 to 8. And then you just repeat it along the opposite side like this. You just go 8 to 8 and just keep on drawing along. Well, this is the miracle because we already have one completely done. Ta-da! I can peel away like that. And before we sent it to the long arm quilter, we actually stitched on that scallop line. Now the next thing is just to take your scissors and trim right up to that scallop line. Go the whole way around the outside edge. And next, you need the bias binding. I love this, just peeling everything away, and it's all done already. Well, we have this great new ruler for cutting bias binding, and I think you'll really like it. Usually, we cut bias binding on the 45-degree angle at 2 1/4 inches wide. So I have a 16-inch piece of fabric right here. I have 2 1/4 inches. So I'm just going to put my cutter right in there and cut to the opposite side. I'm going to the next 2 1/4, put my cutter in there and cut. And so you can see how easy it is to do bias binding. Just keep on going, and once you have those bias bindings cut, then all you need to do is just sew them together into one long piece and then press them in half, wrong sides together. Oh my gosh, I am ready to put this bias binding on. It's going to go so quick. So all you have to do is put your walking foot on and just line up the bias binding around the outside edge. Sew it down once, roll it around to the back, and you will have the cutest little 4-patch. I found the original pattern for the whirligig block in my stash of old Kansas City star patterns. It was actually called a whirligig for your child, and it shows the 2 templates to cut out. Now, aren't we glad we can strip piece all of our blocks and even make 2-inch square blocks? That's little. Well, by definition, a whirligig is a device moved by the wind and turned on its pivot. My dad, Erwin Nagel, loved to make whirligigs in his retirement years. His greatest whirligig is this Santa and his 4 reindeer flying over the town of Zelienople, Pennsylvania. He cut everything out of wood and painted it very special for me. And when the wind blows, the propeller in the front, Santa and his reindeer just jump up and down. It's very cute. Well, on a smaller scale, Father made many whirlybirds. Now, this is the only surviving one, but I had a whole flock of them on my patio cover. And when the wind was up, they kept me awake all night long. Great memories. And then this duck came from our pond in Julian. The wind's flapping the wind, and his webbed feet just paddle along. Very cute. He's getting pretty old, though. And I just love Uncle Sam in his traditional red, white, and blue. His pivot is mounted on 3 patriotic blocks. And then in the wind, his arms just swing about, and he swivels all around. Great fun. Well, the whirligig lap robe is as festive as the 4th of July, and fabrics of red, blue, yellow, and green. Now, the fabrics are really bright, but they're very showy. When I was laying out the blocks, I had to pay particular attention to the reds. So I got them evenly spaced throughout the quilt. I love it. Now, there were a number of white strips in this particular jelly roll. So we sewed those white strips together with a gentle blue. And then to use up all the blocks, I used 4 of them in the corners with wide borders. Now, this little 4-patch quilt is as happy as it can be, especially because it came from the leftovers. Well, the multicolor print lattice just pulls all the colors together. And then the feathers in the border are wonderful. Well, whatever its size or shape. The whirligig has two purposes. It was created for the fun of it, and it gives pleasure to those who see it. Well, quilting has the same purposes, creating for the fun and to give pleasure. Enjoy your quilting.